guys, I'm Shimmer, and we are able to now tell you the details that we got from the playtest event that we had at ZOS, and able to give you a little bit more information about the Summerset expansion. This video will be focusing more on the combat changes and some changes that will affect combat. There will be time links below, so please check those out. If you want to skip over some parts, just click show more to see those. But let's get to it. First up, there will be a significant change to stamina, DPS, and trials. The Night Mother's Gaze and Sunderflame's 5-piece set bonus for penetration will be changed to a major and minor buff, respectively. Therefore, their penetration will no longer stack with other sources of major and minor fracture, which is going to increase the popularity of the more selfish sets, such as Spriggans and Twice Fanged, to reach similar penetration levels. Now I'm going to share with you some upcoming class ability changes, but I do have to give you the caveat that these are subject to change, and that though I am going to give you an overview, this is not an all-inclusive list. Many of the changes they are focused on are giving classes the ability to excel in areas that they might not currently excel in. For example, the Dragonknight is already a great tank, and some of the changes will help them be a fantastic healer. The way that they are approaching this is by making changes to less commonly used abilities and their morphs. Alright, we're going to start with Dragonknight. Now, I have to tell you, I did only start taking notes after the first couple abilities were discussed. So I'm going to pick up where I started taking notes, and we're going to start with the Earthen Heart skill line. For Obsidian Shield, they found people were choosing Ignis Shield morph due to the Major Mending because it healed for more. So they moved the Major Mending to the base ability, Obsidian Shield, and in turn removed the shield strength of the base ability and moved the additional shield strength to Ignis Shield. And in turn, the fragmented shield morph, instead of dealing AoE damage, now extends the Major Mending duration. You can see how now one morph of Obsidian Shield will be more appealing to a tank build, and one more beneficial for a healing focus build. Moving on to Ash Cloud, the base ability has been changed to be a heal focused ability. The Eruption morph will change to a damage ability and will function as it normally does. The Cinder Flame morph changes to a stronger form of the heal ability and still includes the area snare. And now on to Stone Fist. The Obsidian Shard morph now provides more healing and will offer 20% more healing, which is close to the healing of the Templar's Rush Ceremony. They wanted to give them a strong burst heal. So now again, here's another example of how one morph is good for a tank build and one for a healing build. And now on to the Dragonknight's Cauterize ability, which is a morph of Inferno. Had its range increased from 15 to 28 meters to match the other heal ranges in game. This allows it to heal more people in frantic combat with lots of movement. The Empowering Chains morph of Fiery Grip will receive increased amount of Empower stacks you get, so it's not bursty, but will give you more sustained damage when you do get to the enemy. The Reflective Plate morph of Reflective Scales will now remove all snare effects. However, it does not grant immunity. This enforces the playstyle of the Dragonknight being hard to control since they do not have access to the major expedition. They did remove the minor ward buff from the ability. This has now been moved to the Stone Giant morph of Stone Fist, so it now provides minor resolve and minor ward. Moving on to Sorcerer, the Lightning Flood morph of Lightning Splash was far less popular than the other morph. So now Lightning Flood will have its damage increased by 15% so that it ticks harder and has a larger radius than Liquid Lightning. Moving on to Atronach, they noticed that people were using the Greater Storm Atronach due to its increased health. So they increased the health of the Summon Charged Atronach by 70%. Hardened Ward will now give a 20% bonus absorption instead of 30, but raise the base ability of Conjured Ward and Empowered Ward by 10%. So Hardened Ward still nets the same total, but Conjured Ward and Empowered Ward are 10% better. This way you won't feel you are losing effectiveness by choosing Empowered Ward. There are some significant changes to bound armor. First and foremost, it is no longer a toggle. You will no longer need it on both bars to swap. It works a lot like Mage Light, where it provides some bonuses for just having it slotted. The ability has been changed for a more tanking focus, and the base ability increases block effectiveness by 20% for 3 seconds when activated, and activation cost has been reduced. The Bound Aegis Morph will give you Minor Resolve and Minor Ward while slotted, and Bound Armaments Morph will increase your light attack damage instead of heavy attack damage by 11%. With Unstable Familiar, when you first receive the ability and summon your familiar, pressing the button again will activate its AoE ability. This will deal less damage, however, it will affect multiple targets. The ability Summon Winged Twilight can now be activated to cast a heal on a target. The morphs of both abilities will stay the same, and new players will now have a reason after the initial summoning to press the button on the base abilities. For Rune Prison, they have increased the stun duration of both morphs from 2.5 to 5 seconds. The Rune Cage morph will now always do its damage, regardless if a player breaks free. And if the stun completes, if a player were to break free, they will immediately take the damage. Daedric Mines was a fun ability to use, but it was rarely used in combat because of its high Magicka cost, so they decreased the cost to 5,400 from 6,480. Now looking at some Sorcerer passive changes, the Blood Magic passive now has its self-healing increased from 8% to 10%. The Persistent passive has been completely redesigned, and it now reduces Magicka and stamina cost of abilities after you block an attack by 15%. However, the 20% duration increase it previously provided for some abilities is now present in the base abilities, such as Negate Magic, so its duration will remain unchanged. And now moving on to Templar, Healing Ritual has been redesigned to be an area heal and is now an instant cast with an increased cost to be 60% more than Rushed Ceremony. The Hasty Prayer morph now gives minor expedition to allies. For the Breath of Life morph of Rushed Ceremony, the additional ally heal has been reduced by 30%. The Honor the Dead morph will refund Magicka cost over 6 seconds instead of over 8. For the Solar Disturbance morph of Nova, it now gives a major maim debuff to enemies in the area for 4 seconds. This means it will persist for 4 seconds after the effect ends. This also means if you throw it on someone and they run out of it, the effect will continue for 4 seconds after they have left the area. For Solar Flare, you will now receive Empower as soon as the ability is cast, which means you will always and reliably get the Empower even if it is dodged. Puncturing Strikes has had its heal increase from 35% to 40% to make up for the fact that they no longer have major mending. For the Templar passive changes, the Enduring Rays passive will now apply the debuff duration of Major Defile on Dark Flare morph of Solar Flare, and Enduring Rays will now be a flat 2-second increase in duration instead of 30%, which means you will also have an additional tick on Solar Barrage. Burning Light passive will now be supplying more damage. Now moving on to Nightblade, the arming time of Manifestation of Terror Trap, which is an aspect of the Terror morph, has been reduced from 3 seconds to 2 seconds to make it more usable in combat. The Dark Cloak morph of Shadow Cloak no longer provides stealth, but instead heals you for 32% of your max health over 3 seconds and gives you minor protection. The bolstering darkness morph of consuming darkness no longer reduces your own damage taken by an additional 30% beyond the major protection buff, but instead, the major protection buff will last for the entire duration of the ability for anyone who passes through the area, even if they leave the area after gaining the buff. The shadow image morph of Summon Shade is castable without a target to mark a location that you can later return to with a second use of the ability. Unsure whether the skill still produces a Summon Shade, it may just mark the location of the first casting. The Dark Shades morph only summons one shade, which now attacks multiple targets with an area attack and applies minor maim to all targets it hits. The healing from the Soul Siphon morph of Soul Shred has had its radius increased from 15 to 28 meters to make it easier to hit people that are running around. They increased the Magicka return of the debilitating morph of Cripple from 50% to 100% if the target dies. The Malevolent Offering skill has been reworked to be a burst heal and will no longer be a heal over time. The cost will put a dot on the caster, so you'll pay with health over time for the burst heal you provided. The dot is also not purgeable. Good news, you can still kill yourself with this ability. And now on to Warden. Arctic Wind and all its morphs, the heal has been increased 20% on the initial heal. With Frozen Gate, they wanted to make this more useful to non-tanks, so to do this, they added initial damage when enemies hit your trap. Crystallized Shield and its morphs now has an increased cost to 3,200 from 2,700 because of the significant amount of Magicka restored. Nature's Grasp and its morphs will provide 3 ultimate when the hot completes, and with the Nature's Embrace morph can provide 6 ultimate because it procs twice. The Bursting Vines morph will provide 10 ultimate when used on a target under 60% health. In Scorch, the Subterranean Assault debuff duration has been reduced to 5 seconds, down from 10 seconds, and will no longer apply Major Breach, only Major Fracture. The Deep Fissure morph will now apply Major Brief instead of stunning the target. And that's it for the combat changes. If you wanted to know about the Summerset expansion itself, like jewelry crafting, the Abyssal Geysers, the new trial, the Sigil skill line, anything like that, do check out my other video, which I'll link here at the end. And thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. And if you want to catch me live on Twitch, you can do that at twitch.tv/shimmer with 3 M's. And have a great day.